everybody. So today I was just gonna go through really basic steps for how to grow food from your food scraps. I started doing this. It's something that I haven't really done before, and I started doing it because grocery shopping has become such a difficult and strange thing. And I guess probably like a lot of people, I worry about running out of fresh food and fresh greens, especially. I kind of, a meal doesn't feel complete to me unless there's some vegetables in it. And those are the one thing that you run out of the quickest. So there's just some simple ways to keep vegetables growing just from your food scraps. So let's look at, here, Pat, let's introduce you. You're the camera operator. He's behind the camera.
Operator? I can't hear anything.
Yeah, he's deaf to this conversation. But so you can't grow food from every food scrap, but there are certain things that work particularly well. I've discovered that lettuces work very, very well. And you just use the bottom of the lettuce and you put it in a cup of water and it'll resprout. And like it does, like it'll get a little gooey. Parts of it will get gooey because it's just decaying vegetable matter, but you can still see new sprouts in there. And like when we cut this and put it in water, it was just a stump of a lettuce. So it's grown quite a lot, and it's been maybe a week. This is escarole, which is a nice bitter green that you can cook with. And it too is growing really well just from these like cuts right at the root base. So you want to make sure, especially with the lettuces, that you are getting that nice chunk of the root base. And it will grow.
Close up of the root base.
It'll grow little roots. Yeah. Are you seeing very well? Is the camera okay?
Am I pointing it in the right direction?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, and here's another one. And like even with escarole, it kind of feels like the whole thing's falling apart when you're dealing with it. But even despite that, it still grows really well.
Like that's a new plant?
Yeah, I mean it's part of the same plant. Well, so it's not a new plant, but it is a new shoot. So it's like a whole new leaf is growing from the base. And I think something to keep in mind is that it will have more mild taste than the original plant, but it still has a lot of nutritional value, and it'll still be tasty. And celeries also work really well, and you can see this one's even growing roots. So if you wanted to, and you have the soil space and the garden space, you could put this in the garden, and you could put it in the ground right now, and it would take root. And celery is pretty cold hardy, so it wouldn't mind some cold weather. And then, so I had turnips and beets in a shallow pan with water, and they were sprouting and working well, but they were getting kind of mushy, and they were also kind of starting to like ferment a little bit. And I think it's because I had turnips mixed with beets, mixed with radishes and carrots, and it was like too much. And it just like became this like smelly, fermenty thing, which I think it's okay if you're willing to change the water regularly. But we're kind of living in a studio apartment setup, and like offensive odors aren't great when you're trying to sleep. So I put that one in soil. So I just took, the light's not very good in it, but I took the beets and just buried them in some soil, and that'll kind of stop the smelliness factor. And if you have soil, that's a really easy way to do it. And if you don't have soil, then you could just change the water regularly and be okay with a little mushiness and a little smelliness, and that's fine because you'll still be getting fresh vegetables from it. It's not decaying so much that you can't use it. So let's cut some vegetables up. So with the carrots, these are just normal carrots from the store. I didn't buy carrots with green tops specifically, and all of these, the same with the beets. I just bought normal beets from the store. I didn't buy the beets with the green tops. But if you're like going to the store and you do really want to grow greens from the tops, then just look for ones that have a little bit of growth at the top. because that will ensure that it has a base to grow from. Like with these radishes, it's not really going to work because it's been cut down so far, unfortunately. We can try it nonetheless, but like these are just radishes that like came pre-washed and pre-chopped in a bag, so they're not really going to work for us. But with these, you just want to cut like a generous amount down, and whoop, there it is. And then you put it in a shallow dish with a little bit of water. Let me get the water. And it's just very simple. And I think in about a week, you'll start to see growth. And it's pretty, like, even if you're not going to end up eating it, it's still like pretty exciting to have something growing from nothing.
Like a pet rock?
Yeah, it's like a pet rock.
Beet. It's a pet beet, is what it is.
With this carrot, I'm just going to cut off some of this because I don't want it to encourage more decay. So like if things do look like they're decaying, then you can remove it because it might just encourage further decay, and like you want things to be growing, not decaying. So we'll just put this in with the beet too. Why not? And with this turnip, this one already has shoots growing, which is pretty exciting. I mean, it probably is taking away a little bit of the taste from the turnip itself, but once we cut it off, it'll cease doing that. And the reason that might happen is because it's taking nutrients from this root in order to grow new shoots. But if you cut it off, then it's just using whatever you've cut off in order to feed those leaves. So I'm just going to cut it with this tiny knife. And you could do this with any kind of turnip too. And I'll just stick it in the water with these guys. Maybe it doesn't fit. I'll just add more water to it. And like you do want it to be submerged in water. And if it starts to get mucky, you just change the water. It's really not a big deal. And then you could just put this in like a windowsill that has pretty good light. I put mine under grow lights just because we have grow lights at our disposal. And because we have a cat that gets into everything, so the cat would be drinking the water or eating the plants. And if you feel like investing in grow lights, then it's a pretty small investment, and it can make a big difference in the lives of your houseplants or just cuttings that you take where you can start seeds, especially if you don't have a good sunny window. And you can buy them at the hardware store. So that's those. So yeah, these are the roots. And then the greens side of things. So I got these just to demonstrate like you can see that it will be able to grow from there. And like, you know, beet greens and turnip greens are all really delicious and great for cooking with. And when they're really young and tender, like they will be growing from these shoots, then you can even use them in a salad. And so, yeah, I guess let's look at the fennel, which I think is really cool. So the fennel, you just put the whole bulb in the water, and then you can harvest either the tops as a seasoning, or you can harvest the leaves. So I had already harvested a couple of leaves from the outside of the fennel, and we'll try to do it. That's what that scar is from. We'll try to do this one and see what happens. So you just kind of do a really shallow cut so that you're not cutting into the bulb too much. And hopefully, if there is a shoot under there, we can preserve that shoot. So let's see if that comes off. Yeah. I don't see any. Oh yeah, you can actually see a little shoot. So then you can use this for cooking, which is great. And fennel has such a strong flavor that you often don't need that much of it to make a difference in whatever you're cooking. And then, I don't know if the camera will be able to see it, but right in there is a little shoot of another fennel leaf. So we just exposed it, and now it'll be getting more light, and it will be able to grow a little bit more easily. We could even like remove more of that base and use it in a salad or in a bean stew or What else? What have we had with fennel in it recently? Lots of salads. I like fennel in salads. With citrus, it's yummy. Yeah, so you can see that nice shoot, which is very cool. And then you just put this back in the water, and it keeps on growing and keeps on producing. And it's also nice because it's not like languishing in your fridge. It's actually doing something and becoming even more productive. So I guess it's easy to see. We maybe don't need to demonstrate with the celery. It's easy to see that you just preserve that celery base and stick it in water. And I think, I can't tell yet if it's going to make actual shoots because this is my first time doing it, or if it's just going to produce greens. But either way, celery greens are delicious, and they also have like the nice flavor of celery. So you can also do it with cabbage. So tonight, I think we're going to make a cabbage soup. So I'm just going to cut off the base of it, and I won't feel worried about impacting the cabbage itself. And I've cut off bases of lettuces, and they haven't decayed any quicker, just being in bags in the fridge, so I'm not too worried about it. Cabbage, because it's in the brassica family, like the turnips, and also like these little kales that I cut out, it does have, it's like a much more pungent odor, so it could create an odor just like sitting in the water. But if you change the water regularly, then it should be okay. And maybe you're just fine with that. And it's just one of those things that you accept with having living things around. So yeah, I'll just take this. It's very simple. You know, like I didn't even have to like really keep a lot of that core. A lot of that core is still there. And we'll put this in water, and it should just start growing shoots from a lot of these like nodes, the growth lines in there. It'll probably start shooting. I'll just put it in a shallow dish and add some water.
Do you think you would need to like change the sizes of the dish where you grow them into, or does not really any need?
I mean, I don't think it shouldn't matter that much because it's not growing so quickly that it'll like constrain itself. But yeah, I mean, if it seems like it's getting bigger, like maybe with this lettuce, maybe this cup is actually too small and I want to bump it up to a slightly bigger cup so it has more space. But also, you want something that'll hold it up too.
Is it at all helpful to use glass or something clear here to like monitor growth, or is it all the same whether that's in like a coffee mug?
I like using the glass because I think it lets the light through. And especially if you're working in a low light situation, you kind of like want to maximize how much light you're able to get to the plant. But I think you could use any sort of cup and it should be fine, especially because like if this were actually in the ground, this would be the ground and it wouldn't be getting any light anyway. So it's probably okay.
Helps you see, like if you need to change the water or if you're running low on water, because I have a few things here that I'm trying to grow and I keep it in glass so I can check on that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another reason to keep it in glass for sure. It's just to be able to see what the water level is and what the situation is like with the plant, definitely. And then I think a common one that a lot of people already know how to do, especially because it's a plant that comes with little rootlets, are scallions. And so with the scallions, it's super simple. You just chop off the base and stick it in some water. Put it in this cup. And like, it's kind of nice to have a cup that really fits it better. Maybe we have one that fits it better. I don't know. And then this will just grow new green shoots. These little guys will grow new green shoots. And you can put them in the window and keep harvesting them. And it's quite nice. So we'll just add water to that. And yeah, keeping it in something clear does let you see the water level, which is very helpful if you have a clear thing around.
Yeah, for my scallions, I use like this plastic egg carton and just like cut holes in it so I could
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, that's excellent. Can everyone see that? I love that.
Oh,
What are you holding them up with?
It's like the top of the egg carton. I just cut little holes into it. And I just like taped it on the side so the water doesn't come out. It's like
that's awesome.
New bootleg, but it's working.
Yeah, no, that's super awesome. I really like that. I like how each one has its own little
home. Yeah.
Compartment. Yeah, that's super sweet. That's a great idea. That's excellent. What else do we have?
Do you think broccoli or cauliflower could be, because they don't have much?
I was thinking about that. I think it's worth trying. I tried doing it with some kale, and it's like kind of slowly working, and they are in the same family. The kale got really smelly though, so that's why I put it in soil as well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's worth giving it a shot because it's like, what are you going to do with it anyway? If you're just going to end up throwing it away, and it's such a small amount. Uh-oh.
I think your audio cut out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. But yeah, I think it's worth giving it a shot with things that we're not even talking about today. So like, yeah, broccoli or cauliflower, parsnips, you could definitely try it out with because they're like very similar to carrots. I don't know if you can eat parsnip greens though. That's not anything I've done before, but it's worth looking up. Yeah. And then what else was I about? Oh, right. So the last thing in terms of regrowing plants from things that you can buy in the store. So a lot of herbs that you buy in packs, and buying herbs can be really expensive and it can be frustrating because they go bad so quickly. But a lot of the herbs that you buy in packs, like mint, and a lot of things in the mint family, so like lemon verbena or lemon balm, you can take cuttings from. And same with basil. You could also do this with rosemary. It would be a bit more difficult with rosemary because it's a semi-woody. So it'll just take longer to root and you have more risk of it rotting as it's trying to take root. But with mint, which is basically a weed, it's super easy. So I'm just going to take this mint, and that you could do this from a mint, like a bunch of mint that you buy in the store. You see it? I think, yeah, you can see it. So I'm just going to take a cutting from, I'm going to like look at where there are two leaves and take a cutting from there. And now we have this nice piece of mint. And with any cutting, you can do this with houseplants too. With any cutting, you just want to make a clean cut along the nodes, which is where the leaves are growing. So these little nodes can become shoots for roots, or they can start to grow roots there if they just change the way that they're growing, and if you put it in water. And I've never done this before, but I read online that you can use honey as not as a rooting hormone, but just as something to help it root. And I think that that's probably because honey is antibacterial. So it would just be protecting these like fresh new cuts, which are very susceptible to disease or to rotting. It's protecting these new cuts from any potential infection. So I'm going to take this little mint. We just cut the leaves off. You can also, if you want to, you can cut these leaves in half. That's usually what I do when I'm taking other kinds of cuttings. And that's just so you're still keeping the photosynthetic powers of these leaves, but you're taking away some of what the plant has to take care of, so that it's really putting all of its energy into creating new roots. So it's not trying to grow new leaves anymore because these leaves are just photosynthesizing. They're not growing anymore. And it's putting all of that energy into the roots. So I'm going to take some honey. I think whatever kind of honey you have around would probably work. And you don't even need honey, but we're just going to experiment. I'm just going to dip my finger in the honey. And I'm just going to put it on those nodes where we made the fresh cuts, and I'm going to put it at the base too. where we've made that cut. And we might want to actually make a better cut at the base. And I'm going to put it in some water. This is way too deep though. Maybe we'll put it in this one. Sorry.
I don't know where to go.
I'm sorry. It's ever expanding. I'm just going to put it, and like if you have something that will hold that a little bit better, then that would be great. I don't happen to have a cup small enough for it right now. I'll scrounge one up later. But yeah, I'll just let that sit. Maybe we'll put it in the windowsill, or we'll put it under some grow lights. And that will eventually sprout roots from those nodes where the leaves were. And then you have a whole new plant. And you can do that with a lot of things. So with basil, you can do it with a lot of house plants too. Take cuttings. This is really falling down. Come on, guy. I'll fix it later. Yeah, and then another thing I've never done before, but I thought it would be fun because it's Earth Day. Why not try something new? Because I've never sprouted a sweet potato and taken slips from a sweet potato. And slips are just what sweet potato starters are called. So it's when you take the actual tuber and you put it in some water and
You got muted again.
there, we're good, right?
Sorry.
So I was talking about how I want to try sprouting a sweet potato because I've never done that before. And even though we're pretty far north and it will be hard to grow a sweet potato up here, growing sweet potatoes in the city is very easy. You can kind of grow them in any container. Also, like you can grow them in a bag if you put some holes in it. You can grow them in any pot that you have lying around. A garbage can with holes in it, as long as it has some drainage. And it's a really pretty vine, and it's really exciting to just take one sweet potato and make a dozen sweet potatoes. So the way that you sprout them, take the sweet potato. I have some toothpicks here. And the toothpicks are really just to hold it up. So we're going to fill this with water. And my fingers are all sticky with honey. You're going to fill it with water. And the toothpicks are just to kind of like create a little scaffolding to hold it a little bit out of the water so that it is not sitting fully submerged and could potentially rot. Because sweet potatoes do like a lot of drainage. So you want to take your sweet potato and identify the pointy end, which I think is this end, and there's a flat end, which is still kind of pointy, but it's a little bit more flat. And so the flat end will go into the water, and the pointy end will be facing out of the water. I'm just going to take some toothpicks. Okay. Oh no. Okay. So I've got like 4 toothpicks, and I'm just going to take this thing, I'm going to find like the level that I want it to be sitting in there at. I think that that's about deep enough for my taste. And I'm just going to stick toothpicks in so that it can hold itself up at that level. And if you leave this in your windowsill for about 2 weeks, maybe 1 to 2 weeks. I think in 1 week you'll see it sprout, and in 2 weeks, oh, see, I made it too high, so we have to fill out more water. And in 2 weeks you'll be able to, so it'll grow shoots from all of these little nodes that are kind of hard to identify. But it's a tuber, so basically the whole thing is full of nodes. And like on potatoes, it's easier to see because they have like little eyes. But it will grow shoots from all these little nodes, and then you'll just take a really clean knife and you can cut around the new shoots and plant those individually, and those will be sweet potato plants. And they will produce sweet potatoes, and they have these really pretty vines, and you can grow them as a house plant even if you want to. Yeah, and it's something that I've never tried to do before, but if you have a sweet potato laying around in a cup of water, then it seems worth giving it a shot. And it's always, especially as we're spending more time at home, it can be really exciting to see the little stages of growth that so many plants go through and that normally we don't get to see. Yeah. Any questions?
No questions.
I have a question.
No. Oh, Pat has a
I have a question. Is it, you said when you were talking about this one,
Yeah.
this what is this called?
Celery.
Celery. You said you could just plant this.
Uh-huh.
Would it be easier to plant this scrap in dirt than it would be to like start a seed of celery?
I think it would be easier, but I don't think that the celery will taste as celery as a celery from a seed, because this is a plant that has already made a celery. It's like done, it's gone through its course in life and it's already done its thing, so it doesn't have like the full potential that a little celery seed has. I think, but it is certainly easy. That's the fun thing about things like sweet potatoes, is that this is just going to produce a whole plant. This itself, like the sweet potato itself, is the seed. So yeah.
If people wanted, this is a little bit outside of what you've been talking about, but if people wanted to like plant seeds, do you think right now, what are the things that one would need just for people at home? What are the things beside the seed itself, which I think you can order online, and obviously soil?
Yeah. I have a setup right here. I was going to sow some seeds today, so we could do that. But soil is a good thing for starting seeds. Also, some sort of soilless mix is sometimes really nice. So by soilless, it means just like peat moss, instead of actual like clay, sand, loam. And peat moss is kind of controversial because it's not as renewable a resource as soil is. There's kind of a fixed amount of peat moss in the world, but it does work really well as a seeding medium. And there's substitutes for that, like coconut coir is also a really good seeding medium, or you can just use soil or compost, and that's also fine. So I use these little guys, which are just like compressed peat pellets, and they've been dehydrated. You add water, and then they become this little fat soil thing. I really like these because they're very, very light and portable, and they're very easy to store in an apartment. So instead of having like a big bag of soil sitting in an apartment, you just have like a bag of these little pellets.
They're tidy.
Yeah.
They're tidy.
They're very tidy. Yeah. And so you add water to them. I like to add hot water just because it works a lot faster. They become these guys. And another really nice thing about them is they have this cloth coating on the outside, and the roots just grow right through the cloth. And you just plant the whole thing. You don't peel off the cloth when you plant it, and it helps a lot with the transplant shock. So using these is good for especially things like legumes that do get a lot of transplant shock. Any sort of beans or peas, these are really nice for that. So I guess, supplies, something to plant it in. If you don't have a lot of light in your apartment or a sunny windowsill, then getting some sort of grow light can be really helpful, and that can like take it to the next level.
Can we show them how simple these grow lights are?
Oh yeah. So like, these grow lights are just from Home Depot, and they're incandescent bulbs. These are 60 watt, I think. And the nice thing about these is that not only do they produce just like a really mellow daylight kind of light, but they also produce heat. So for a lot of seedlings, heat is needed to germinate. So for things like bell peppers and eggplants, a lot of things in the deadly nightshade family, so like tomatoes. So yeah, it's a super simple setup, and we just got some clamp lights and some bulbs, and we got that at Home Depot. but I think I've seen them at local hardware stores, and I think a lot of hardware stores are still open even now.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.